when I was running my group. It was like, I just have to show up and be with these people.
Mm.
Like, I just have to show up and be myself. I was like preparing slideshows. I was preparing like all lesson plans to coach my members through like the 10 habits of body thrive. And I realized like I just get to show up and be myself.
Everyone, it's Kate with, I think we're putting this on Wellness Pro Academy on our Well Pro show. And we're going to talk about money issues, shadow issues, stages of development, and particularly what we see in holistic practitioners, yoga teachers, Ayurvedic practitioners that keeps them from growing financially and how that affects not just their life, but also their practice, like how they're able to actually have impact. And this is a complicated issue because there's value in the modern, in modern economy. There's value exchange happens through a number of ways, but it does happen through money. And so helping people value their own transformation, just like wellness pros value their own transformation. Wellness pros, I think, are actually the best investors in wellness and in wellness education and wellness transformation and spiritual transformation as a subsector. However, I just want to pitch this whole thing here. However, what I see gets in their way is they have deep blockages and gaps in their development that actually keep them from helping others invest in their own transformational journeys. And this at large is hindering communities from evolving. So that to me is like part of the greater context of money and shadow issues. I'm here with Patrick Heffernan, who we met through my yoga health coaching program years ago, and Bill Hershey of livestreambusiness.com, who works as a CPA, bookkeeper, and works with holistic practitioners with not CPA, bookkeeper, who works with holistic practitioners in somatic money issues and business strategy. So that all that said, at Wellness Pro Academy, we have a very specific business model that's targeted to experienced wellness pros. We have 10 different avatars, from functional medicine doctors to experienced yoga teachers and holistic practitioners and shamans and healers of all various sorts, and teach them a very specific business model to hit financial targets with a very specific way of doing marketing and enrollment. And I've had to make it so specific in order to minimize the actions needed, and so that people just get less hung up on the mystery of how a good holistic business should work for three things: for client results, for income, and for impact. Yeah. Or sorry, client results, which is impact, income, and wellness pro lifestyle.
Mm.
Yeah. So I think we've all been on a journey. I think, Patrick, you and I haven't talked in a while. We've done some podcasts before, and we both sort of have a lot, I think, to kind of catch up on and recalibrate. But why don't we just start with your impulse for, just talking about money shadow issues in the holistic field?
Yeah, totally. I'm reading Atlas Shrugged right now for the first time, which I'd never picked up, even though it had been recommended to me a handful of times. And one of the last times it was recommended to me was by the studio owner that I'm currently working for at a yoga studio called Village Yoga in Kinderhook, New York. And he was just kind of like describing this ethos that him and his wife, they own the studio together, this ethos that they have that's like, wake up every day, make the most out of the day, kind of go all in on like getting done what needs to get done to move projects forward with like momentum and in an impactful way, kind of like what you're talking about, Kate.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole time I'm listening to him, I'm just thinking like orange, 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 because you familiarized me, Kate, with the spiral dynamics framework, which really breaks down these stages of development in a very comprehensive way and highlights the characteristics of each stage. And it is that orange stage that's very much about the achiever, very much about the one who wants to play the
Mhm.
game to win. And in that conversation, he actually just mentioned like, it's kind of like that book, Atlas Shrugged. And I'm like, all right, I've got to pick this book up because it resonated with me. But also, as I was listening to him, I was like, just getting this kind of sinking feeling in my stomach that's like, damn, this is like kind of what I failed to do. Like what I, in some sense, like failed to integrate in my own business venture. Because, I can give some of the backstory, but I launched my coaching business a couple of years ago, and I did well. Like I think I did probably better than I even realized. But I
Mhm.
also remember it being like kind of devastating and really hard. And a lot of the things that you're highlighting, Kate, about like what stops people from taking the actions and the shadows that come up when we're in that process of trying to go through a launch, trying to run a sales process, like trying to put ourselves out there on Instagram and social and all those things. I definitely felt like it just got to a certain point where it was like more overwhelming for me, emotionally, mentally, than it was worth. So I kind of let the thing crash and burn, which I'm okay with because I believe like everything's iterative. So like it's not like the end, but
Mhm.
it did leave me very curious about like what happened and how it relates to this specific stage that I'm referring to, this stage orange, this stage of development where we really take like self ownership as an individual. And yeah, that's kind of what prompted me to reach out to you and let you know what I was thinking about.
So what I guess what I'm wondering as well is like what I'm noticing in my space sort of was like, white Gen X female entrepreneur, influencer, author in the wellness space, right? Is what's happening with the less holistic ones, the more allopathic ones like Dr. Stacey Sayers and Mel Gibbon, and just seeing how Mel Robbins, uh, how there's this real missing piece of holistic wisdom, like deep
Mm,
holistic wisdom. And so I have this drive, very orange, very orange, that drive. And we're talking about spiral dynamics and the different levels of development here. And so in orange, there's what Patrick described. There's this comfortability in business and achievement and goal setting. And, it's where we get like SWOT analysis. It's where we get a lot of really great, quarterly planning, business tools, et cetera, really comes from that level of development. And then after that level of development, that's actually where most of like the holistic practitioners start in their adult journey, is more usually at the green stage of development, which is
mm,
much more of like, well, it's what Ken Wilber called flatland, where it's like everybody's opinion matters, which is true, and there is hierarchy, so it's missing some of that hierarchy. And usually there's a huge shadow issue with people that haven't had a healthy relationship with achievement and goal setting before they reach that green stage. And so there can be an aversion to sales, an aversion to marketing, an aversion really to how business works at all. And yet the issue that I see is that I'm going to, as Claudia Welch says, make up a statistic that, I'm going to just say 90% of people in holistic wellness that are professionals are going to be self-employed.
mm,
And so that means that you are running a business, even if it's just at a technician level. Like a technician level would be a massage therapist who has massage practice. And so she's just going to cap out in terms of time and money. A yoga studio owner who's running a multiple class schedule, maybe doing some privates. Usually what we're seeing in that is that they're, pre-internet shopping, they were making 30% revenue from retail, but now people buy stuff on Amazon because it's cheaper. So they lost that buffer in retail. So now their revenue is largely coming from their own blood, sweat, tears, and teaching privates. Right. And so these are just like the dirty secrets of the wellness industry because I work with the practitioners on business. This is my every single day conversation. So then we get these wellness pros who are amazing,
Mm.
amazing at what they do, who have invested tens of thousands of dollars in their own enlightenment journeys, in their own skill modality development journeys where they've personally benefited, right? So they're in it because they feel better based on what they've learned. They're able to take better and better care of themselves and have higher levels of consciousness. So there's a lot of that being able to invest in self, then transitioning to like, oh, I'm doing this to also support myself. And that's where that gap is. And that shadow issue, unfortunately, keeps a lot of other people that they could help from being able to invest in themselves because they won't deal with the orange shadow issue or this gap of, like I was talking, I'll just say one more thing. I know I'm going on and on, but this naturopath I was talking with yesterday, and I said the word goal, and she's like, I
Mm.
was like, okay, dream. Can we say a dream? Which is funny, Patrick, because you said that the podcast that you first heard me on was when we were doing our Unearth Your Dream series. And that had really, really high resonance. We did over 200 conversations. These were discovery sessions. And we by far found the majority of people didn't know what their deeper dream was. But that was a safe word to use, that green, whereas goal, like having a
Mm.
financial goal, having a financial target, that is just absolutely taboo for a certain percentage of very talented holistic practitioners and yoga teachers who therefore will not be able to support themselves making a living at the same socioeconomic standard that they were raised.
Mm.
Huh.
Yeah, so like what do they do?
It's hard. It's hard. I mean, I was listening to Andrew Huberman this morning talk about toxic people. He just released a show on, how you can change yourself and therefore it changes your relationships with people that are toxic. And I was listening to it and I was thinking about a lot of my besties that are successful entrepreneurs
Mm.
and how we have, like, entrepreneur literally means one who takes risk. So I think actually a lot of us have had deep trauma early in life that makes us able to gamble a lot.
Mm.
And so because of that, like it could be, it's like turning a negative into a positive in a lot of ways. If we have, like, for example, my daughter's like super grounded, like super, super grounded from the way that she was conceived in utero, postpartum, like the whole deal of like higher consciousness perception through early childhood. And therefore she's probably not that willing to take unnecessary risks because she doesn't have that drive.
Mm.
So to me, part of it is the issue that the self-employment of wellness pros sets them on an entrepreneurial journey that they don't have the DNA for. Like they don't have the trauma wounding for.
Hmm. That's fascinating because I've been meditating a lot lately on like the ways in which I've been driven by my shadows and and motivated. And part of the way I have to frame it is like getting into the right things for the wrong reasons. Like I really noticed that, like especially as an actor. Like it almost seems undeniable to me now that part of what was driving me in wanting to be an actor was just to like be able to get up on stage and have everybody look at me and get attention, like and have eyes on me and to kind of like have a captive audience. And of course, like that in some sense it kept on leaving me a little unfulfilled because it was like waiting for an external to validate me. And no matter what benchmark I would hit, like I got into the college theater program, I moved into New York City, I got an agent, I started booking jobs, I got national tours. It, I always kind of was left feeling like wanting more. It was like I couldn't just self validate. And so yeah, that thing of like it's really interesting the ways in which our traumas drive us to actually make strides towards the dream. Towards the dream, but then they're also going to be like the dragons that we have to face in pursuing that dream are
Mm.
going to be like correlatively related to those traumas, those shadows, you know?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And that's what we see happen, right? With like we always like the entrepreneurial journey is usually it's like, well, there's you hit one benchmark and by the time you're, three-quarters of the way or halfway there, like you've already set the other one. And that it's that, it is that sort of rat race in terms of like what's driving what's driving that feeling of never enough, right? That sense of,
Mm.
right, there's not the wholeness.
Yeah, like I remember feeling like it was just an utter unrealistic possibility that I would ever launch my group and enroll 10 people, whatever it was. And then I did exactly that. And some months after that was done, I was like, it's like I forgot that I achieved that thing.
Yeah.
And that must be part of the shadow because it's like I couldn't clock the achievement. You led us through a really, really excellent exercise um, where we were using the gap and the gain framework. Basically, we had to list out like everything that we had accomplished and achieved over the course of like at first it was like a 3 month period, then a 6 month period, a 9 month period, and then read it back to our colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was reading back, I remember just weeping through it because I hadn't really fully taken ownership of, and that's such a spiral dynamics thing too, of this like differentiation versus integration, differentiation, integration. So the differentiation happened, but like that integration piece for business owners, and I mean, maybe this is partly where you could come in too, Bill. It's like, did my body know that I did it? Right? Like, yeah, on paper it happened, all these things, but like, did I really actually integrate it into like the mass of my body?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I can add here. This is where, and I do this too for my own business. Not enough, but I do it, listing our wins, and I do it with my clients as well. I think it's so important. I didn't, even though I'd meditated for many, many years, I'm probably, I love that we're using the spiral dynamics framework. I was probably bypassing my orange part of myself for a long time. And then as I went into business, I had to kind of reintegrate that. And part of that reintegration is really seeing where we've come from relative to where we're at currently. And, I agree. I think it's a therapeutic process to list out the wins. And I remember when I first heard this exercise, I actually encountered it through someone who Kate also knows. It's Barry Tessler, author of Art of Money. And she was just a tremendous influence for me as a financial services provider who also identifies as someone who is also a healing artist of sorts. And so I was really intrigued by what's going on here when we're naming wins and celebrating wins. Why is that so significant? At first, I was kind of writing it off as like, that feels like ego a little bit. Why do I need to build my ego with these accomplishments? But as I sank into it, I came to realize that um, being able to slow down, that creating space and slowing down is really what allows us to integrate. And in business, especially, it can be challenging to take that time to slow down because there's always more to do.
Mm.
And oftentimes, what happens with me when I'm in that place of kind of rat racy, kind of hustle and discontent, it can be difficult for me to appreciate the momentum that's already been accomplished. So, taking time and space to come back and reorient, okay, these things have been accomplished. Taking the time to really celebrate that, be present with that for some time. I still don't know if I can fully explain what's going on there. I think it's alchemical, but it's like we're reminding our nervous system, we're reminding ourselves that, like, hey, we are capable of doing things. And we actually got a ton done in these last 3 or 6 or 12 months. And giving ourselves permission to feel good about that. Like, yeah, that feels, and even, this is, we're talking about maybe introducing even a somatic exercise with this, just even noticing, where do I notice that in my body? And I think the practitioners who you attract, Kate, probably have a, a great capacity for somatic intelligence.
Oh yeah.
Yoga
A
practitioners.
lot of them teach it.
And so the challenge here is for someone who has a great degree of somatic intelligence, let's now apply this to how we relate to business, how we relate to money. What do we notice in our nervous system as we approach some of these things? So, if someone's approaching this, like Patrick, you named this process of naming wins and having this kind of sounded like almost, I don't know if catharsis is the right word, but I had a
Mm,
somewhat cathartic moment when I did that exercise for the first time. And it was a huge relief, but really taking that in. And I think being able to take in that feeling and that experience is part of what helps remind our nervous system from a more healthy point of view, from a more sattvic point of view, that yes, we are enough. Yes, we are capable. And making that a practice is what helps overcome those parts of ourselves that may push us, that kind of maybe trauma dynamic. For me, it's a feeling of inadequacy that comes up sometimes, that I'm not enough. I need this more training to be good enough to serve my clients. And now I recognize that and I use it, and it drives me still, but it doesn't control me in the same way that it does.
mm.
So anyways, curious to hear how that lands for you.
Yeah, I'll speak to a few parts of this. So Gay Hendricks' work with Big Leap and the way that I reinterpreted that work was like with my members, was in particular when I was writing Master of You and working with, which is now Club Hero, is recalibration.
Mm.
So we need to, at every level of achievement, orange word, right? Achievement, that we recalibrate, because we've grown. And so the way that we've grown in capacity and capability. Those are like, to me, the two ways that we grow. We have more capacity. Usually that's in nervous system. This is in Sanskrit, that word guru comes from that increased capacity of the nervous system. Right. And then capability, where we can direct that energy. And so because there's these new capacities and capabilities, we need to actually integrate and reintegrate who we are, because we're bigger, we're energetically more capable, we're more grounded. I've seen so many stages in myself where like things that like threw me, like I kind of look back and laugh at the things that used to throw me off,
Yeah.
and the amount of chaos and drama I can handle is quite tremendous at this point, and minimize. And so for me, my somatic practice, if anything feels off, I'm on it, because I have very, very low tolerance for noise, any kind of noise in my field, in my team, and anything. And so if we have the practice of recalibrating, right, energetically, we're actually more capable to do more great things for ourselves and for each other. Let's now go to second tier consciousness. So at a higher level of consciousness, when we leave that green meme, and then there's this big leap where we can actually see the whole first tier on these levels. We can see our shadow issues. We can see that every place of development it's okay. It's part of it. It's all necessary. And we all have these, these shadows that we can help each other with, and these other ways of relating. What we can then see to orange is the functionality of, in quarterly planning and annual planning, there's always this recalibration. So it's actually built into the SWOT and quarterly planning and annual planning exercises that are a huge asset of orange meme. And as practitioners of all levels of business get used to the practices at that level, which are very different than the practices at purple. So at purple, we have practices much more around mythic and magic and imagination. And every part of the spiral, every level is essential and accessible and has its own tools and skills. Well, as we start to access some of those inherently built reflection, analysis of accomplishments, of lessons learned, and of strengths, we actually are able to then build that new capacity strategically into the next quarter. And that's a lot of what we now do, like with Club Thrive. We do this a lot, particularly with the Club Hero members, religiously. So, which I mean ritualistically, that it's built into at least our, we do trimester instead of quarterly because we find it works better with smaller businesses, that we don't need quite as many planning cycles as a larger business. And it's not just for business, but it's really for any, like I do it with my family, and we are incorporated as a business, but like teaching my child, my husband, it means we're able to be so much more dynamic in the marketplace and leverage opportunity rather than just like sleepwalk through what culture is doing.
Yeah, and I mean what a lot of culture is doing in Orange is hustle culture. It is kind of like it's a different shadow in Orange of like excess. It's the Rajas to where Bill is bringing in the opportunity for a Sattvic kind of way, a more even, a more balanced way to like, and I really responded to that when you said it, Bill, because a lot of people that are in kind of a wellness business, they understand the value of Sattvic lifestyle. So much so that they're like, I'm not going to compromise that. And if I start wigging out because my business is stressing me out and, kicking me all around into like Rajas and Tamas and I lost my center, then I'll let the business go because Sattva is so important to me. But, at least what I'm finding is that like it's kind of just the thing where like if you don't face it at once, if you don't face it in one environment, it's just going to be right there waiting for you in another environment. And so it kind of is a little bit of this call to arms. It's very nervous system based too. Like, can I stay regulated as I move through this adversity, whether it's the adversity of like, handling a rejection on a sales call or pitching. I mean, the first time you have to give your like pitch to someone, like your body's freaking out, like you're vibrating on the inside, your voice is all shaky. It's yeah, so I really responded to that kind of sattvic approach, and I'm just thinking too of like I don't know. There's a reason that like this conversation didn't come after I watched The Wolf of Wall Street, which is you could say is also a very orange dominant movie, but there is just something about the way that Ayn Rand writes that like feels very holistic to me. I'd love to share the quote with you guys. I don't have to do it right now, but that was the one that just kind of like stopped me in my tracks, and I'm like,
Yeah, go ahead.
should I read it?
Yeah.
I'll pop it in the chat so you can see it there too. But yeah, I was like, I've got to send this to Kate. So she writes, this is the character Dagny Taggart talking right after she's, had this massive success with the John Galt line. The railroad is going. She's like, she's in ecstasy basically watching her project come to fruition. And so she's saying here, it was a strange foreshortening between sight and touch, she thought, between wish and fulfillment, between the words clicked sharply in her mind after a startled stop, between spirit and body. First the vision, then the physical shape to express it. First the thought, then the purposeful motion down the straight line of a single track to a chosen goal. Could one have any meaning without the other? Wasn't it evil to wish without moving, or to move without aim? Whose malevolence was it that crept through the world, struggling to break the two apart and set them against each other? And when I read it, I felt it in my body. We're talking like somatics here. And I felt, both so moved by it and a little uplifted by it and inspired by it, but also a little heartbroken by it because I felt like I was kind of in a manifestation of this malevolence that has kind of wedged itself between what my vision was and my ability to manifest it. Because I do have this sense that, like, I've got some greatness in me. I've got some, like, brilliance in me. And I want to bring that forth. but what happened? What happened? So yeah, that's the quote. Thanks for letting me share it.
I just so appreciate your vulnerability and always have, Patrick, and it helps, you know, it helps me with my own, right? Of right, we've all had these experiences where it's like it gets so hard that we're willing to part with a vision. Like we're willing to settle, we're willing to downgrade, we're willing to give up, pivot, I stop. I love Seth Godin's the book The Dip. It's like, you know, there's a healthy place to stop, right? It's like knowing where you'll stop. But then there's also the stopping really before we actually know and looking at that why. And I think that's what I'm hearing. And what you're saying is like you're conscious of that place where you'll stop, where you stopped before. Where did you stop before? It's a question I actually got from wealth coach David Nagel. He's like, know where you stopped before, because you know that you'll have to go beyond that in the future to experience something greater. And so with, you know, if you couple that with the concept that we're in growth, right? This is the whole background of, you know, whether we look at the spiral dynamic system of human development or Claire Graves' model of human development or any of the gazillion other now models of human development, is it's based on transcend and include. They all seem to have that in common, that you become, again, more capable and more capacity, and therefore, and also more able to relate to people at the various stages of development, which makes you, again, more capable, right? And increase capacity so that we can help other people go through things that we've gone through in the past. So I just want to share that for me with, you know, I had at the same time I had cancer, I was down 4 pints of blood, and I was done with my yoga brands, right? Like I had been out of integrity for about like 5 years with just being like, I can't just be niched into the yoga scene. My dharma is beyond this. I struggle with the name. My leads, like my prospects coming in, have issues because they're not like most of them are not identified as yoga. And my path is clearly going in another direction in that transition. Physically, like, and in business, like just kind of like breaking things, like everything, the whole breaking down before the renewal, not just was challenging for the people that were working with me, but in terms of my team, it's challenging for my clients. But just to see how in all of that, allowing that massive dissolution, like, cause I had to just, it was insane, right? And just being willing to use the capacity and capabilities that I had developed from, you know, mostly from my training in yoga and enlightenment and Ayurveda and all the things, right? Relying back on that and trusting that. And that trust was what I think in so many ways was propelling me out of a dominant drive in Orange and into just, let's see what happens. So what I wanted to get to is like you know, some of the highest values of any spiritual tradition, and definitely of yoga, is this svatantriya, is this complete freedom to create. And so when I look at Ayn Rand's, you know, this beautiful quote that you brought forward about this, you know, this vision and then the physical shape to express it, is what I'm seeing is that the holistic practitioners are not actually in alignment with svatantriya, with the highest, that like you can't change that 90 whatever 8% of wellness pros are going to be self-employed. Like none of us are going to be able to change the healthcare industry. We're not going to be able to change the insurance industry. We're not going to be able to change that in the marketplace. And all of the wellness pros that I know that are taking insurance, they're just trying to get out of it. So no one wants to have anything to do with that business model, which means that we have to heal our orange shadow issues in order to be in Svatantriya, to actually be in our dharma, to actually be in our purpose, meaning, vision, drive, to actualize. And so for me, that sort of the second tier leap, one of the things that I keep finding, it's quite repetitive, is that I am able to let it all go, like let all the worlds go, like let everything go energetically, physically, mentally, and see what happens. And what I'm finding happens is it all reconstructs exactly as it is. And that's wild to watch. And so, like, one of the biggest reasons I'm still building in building mode with my company, with Wellness Pro Academy, with Club Thrive, is the team. Is like the employment of these beautiful people who are in it on the vision. Like, and that was never that was never my orientation before, right? It was always the mission of the company. It wasn't the who wants to actually do the work, who wants to work a job, right? Because as a wellness pro grows beyond self-employment, they're able to then employ others, and they're able to become a force of really progressive business ethics and growth, which starts to change the industry, right? It just starts to change also opportunities for other people in wellness, so that we don't all have to be self-employed. So I just want to share that, like that whole break between the vision and the goal, like that manifestation, right? As we are yogis or holistic practitioners, like, to me, that is the yoga. And it demands healing of the orange shadow. It demands the healing of the goals, the money issues, the having an offer, selling the offer, delivering on the offer, like these words that, again, are just, I mean, the holistic wellness pros that I work with initially, they just feel sick when I say those words. How do you know if you have an orange shadow? There you go.
Yeah, exactly. These are your buzzwords. No, thank you so much for that. Yeah, I really responded to when you mentioned the out of integrity piece, because, that question I'm saying, what happened? It's a question for me. It's a
Yeah.
reflective tool for me to kind of look back and, in terms of out of integrity, I was struggling with a lot of self-worth. I was struggling with self-trust. I was smoking like way too much weed. Like it wasn't the way to do it, like getting high before every single sales call and coaching call that I led. Like that wasn't going to be sustainable. And so like something had to give, like, and maybe I could have, for some reason or other, I didn't kick it at the time. But yeah, like something had to give, and I really appreciate you bringing it back to the dissolution process too. And like it's a very valuable, necessary, like unavoidable part of the cycle.
Yeah. And it's somatic. Like there has to be, in my experience, in order for the second tier experience of orange, like, which to me, you can't really completely heal orange until you're second tier.
Yeah.
Because you can't leverage it as just like you might not be able to leverage, like I wasn't able to leverage more like blue traditional, like right, wrong,
Mm,
good, bad, it's like you can't leverage it until you're at the next level of it. And you can then reflect, right? You can look back, you can see, and then you can do it so differently. And what, to me, the biggest difference between that first tier and second tier are that where there's still some shadow issues that are disrupting the goal. So you're not able to get to the goal because of the shadow,
yeah.
right? It's like, why are we not able to get to the goal because of the shadow? And it's actually like kind of popping into my awareness right now as I'm working with, it seems to me, I'm like working with a lot of women who have sacrificed either partnering or parent or mothering.
Mm,
And it's very similar that there's a shadow and it causes them to sacrifice what's potentially the most interesting parts of their life, of like real deep human connection in the female form, right? It has a lot to do with partnering and mothering, right? Just like for men, it has to do with partnering and fathering.
mhm.
This is not crazy talk. This is just how the species has evolved over time. And without those two things, you don't get the species, right? You get
Mm.
die out, which is happening. And it's the same thing is it's just like, I just don't go there.
Mm.
Right. Like I'm just good on my own. Like, and there's this, to me, the path, like the real honest to goodness path of waking the fuck up, of like, of enlightenment, of being whoever you can be and following those divine impulses of desire, of the Shakti, of manifestation, is like, who do I have to become in order for that to happen? Because it's not who I am, right? It's not who I was yesterday. Maybe I can be a little bit more of that today. And maybe a lot of that is spiritual or psychic or energetic or somatic. And maybe some of it's tactical, skill based.
And whoever it is that that person has to become, it's there's this language that's used in a book I'm reading called "Acting as a Way of Salvation," and it's a
Mm.
study of a Raganuga Bhakti sadhana. Raganuga is basically when you're just like just so driven by your devotion that like the scriptural injunctions for what you're supposed to do don't even matter. You're just in it for like the love and the devotion. And what the author is putting forth in this book is that we can actually approach that as actors. And the way that we do it is we look to what he calls paradigmatic individuals. So
Mm.
individuals that represent the paradigm of the world that you desire to live in. And so
Mm-hmm.
the reason I'm framing that out is because whatever identity it is that, we as wellness pros, as healers, that we're evolving into, well, first of all, we have people who act as paradigmatic individuals for us. You
Mm-hmm.
know, Kate, you're like for sure one for me. But there's so many. You've named so many like thought leaders, thinkers, writers, authors, and we're in a world where we have a lot of exposure to them too in a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
way. And then they become that person for who they're leading. And I think that's like you face shadows in stepping into that too. Like, am I willing to lead? Am I willing to kind of live the path? Like, yeah, do the thing that I'm preaching. And that was a huge like light bulb for me when I was running my group. It was like, I just have to show up and be with these people.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just have to show up and be myself. I was like preparing slideshows. I was preparing like all lesson plans to coach my members through like the 10 habits of body thrive. And I realized like I just get to show up and be myself. Um, so that's it. It's one of those things where it's like it's gonna take work, obviously, but it might not necessarily be the work that you think it's going to take. And so like step into, and that is like, I think that spiral dynamics like overlays really nicely with the chakras. And we are kind of, by the time we're getting to orange, we're in like authenticity, will, action, drive, manipura, there's a lot of that. And yeah, that's just kind of coming through for me after hearing what you said.
Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting, like how it goes to healing blue, right? Of this like good, bad, right, wrong, the religious dogma of like, nothing below the belt, like no sensation, that numbness, that disconnect from sexuality, right? Where we're born a sinner, we're born in yoga, it's maybe we're born an idea of needing to transcend, which is the same thing as
Hmm.
being born a sinner, right? It's just different language from classical yoga, where the austerity practices or all that. And so instead we can like pivot into hedonism, which a lot of green is in hedonism, where you're just like, as long as I feel good, as long as I got my yoga buzz on, like that's all I need. But then there's this deeper truth, right? Like this deeper drive, like this deeper desire of the what if. And I love in that quote of, wasn't it evil to wish without moving or to move without aim? And that's what I find so much in this. Oh, I just wish I just had
Yeah.
clients and I didn't have to find my clients, or I just wish that it was all set up and so that
It's
I
like that wish costs you something. It's like Peter Block language a little bit, but like there's a cost to you having that wish, and that is rectified by you taking action on it. It's going to beg action of you when you wish it.
So I just want to go a little into the fear of rejection, right? If we
Mm.
just go into like what's really driving that perpetuation of wellness pros who have the skills, they've already done the personal investment, they don't have the business structure, or they might have the business structure like you had the structure, but then at some point you're like, I don't want to do this kind of whatever the work of finding leads or making sales or some part of it. That's the work, and I love how Layla Hermosi, who's like one of the, she's a driving female entrepreneur right now who will we'll see will be on track to hit like the billionaire female entrepreneur club, which is insanely impressive. Regardless of whether or not we respect that, it's like there's something about, yeah, but you couldn't do it kind of thing. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Or when you're in a league like that. And she's like, every business and what they do at acquisitions.com, where they're acquiring partial ownership of businesses with entrepreneurs and companies that are already, doing really well and they're helping them grow. She's like, every business has shit. Like every business has shit that nobody really is going to want to do. And it's usually repetitive and it's essential. And so we have this the yogis are the worst about this. And they're the more spiritual, maybe it's not related to yoga, but the more spiritual wellness practitioners have this idea that if it doesn't feel good, it's not right. And that's what keeps them not just broke, but not having impact. And that's that evil that Rand is
Yeah.
talking about. And it's bad because it's not evolution. It's not on that growth trajectory of like, I mean, I did this 1 minute short the other day, and I do think I was stoned, Patrick, for the record. And I was like, leadership equals leader shit. And the more shit you're
Mm.
willing to deal with consistently makes you more of a leader. Because you can then lead people through the shit that they're going to have to deal with, right? And you can actually take the responsibility to, well, somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, you brought up the fear of rejection piece. It's kind of like what is the gift of rejection? Like what is the opportunity in rejection? And I had to face it a lot as an actor. I mean, I'd be just curious to know what the ratio is. This is, I guess, how people find out what their closing rates are and whatnot. But like, usually you get way more rejections than you get closes. Like, I had way more jobs that I auditioned for that I didn't book than I did book. So to me, so much of this stuff points us right to like the level of beliefs we hold about ourselves, which are tied intrinsically to our identities. And if you can start to like tease some of that stuff out and make it explicit, like and gamify it, like what belief got reinforced when this person, turned my offer down or when they brought up this objection. Like it actually, this can get really fun. I probably didn't like frame myself out super strong at the beginning of the podcast, but like I did well. I was doing sales for you, Kate. It was like I was taking a lot of calls and
Yeah.
I could feel like my growing edge. And I started to get to the point where I'm like, bring on the objections. Like now we're actually getting to the heart of the matter. Now I can actually be of service to you here.
Mhm.
But if you don't kind of get through those, whatever the beliefs is, it's for me, it was so much of, I'm not enough. I'm going to be less than. It's like I need them to believe me in order to believe myself, which is kind of backwards. Like the salesperson always has to have the belief. Like sales is basically a transference of belief. So yeah, I just appreciated that you brought up the fear of rejection thing because that to me does feel like it's one of the things that's like linked to a core wound. Like, and yeah, like, I don't know, Bill, you can jump back in here too, but like, what's coming up in the body when those things are happening?
Let me add one thing before you, Bill, on this. And this is like when orange is high functioning, and this is so fun to understand, right? It's like when orange is high functioning, and by the time for wellness pros who can deliver on results, meaning you know what you're doing. You're not green, you're not new. So we're not talking about if anyone's listening and you're green or you're new, we're not talking to you right now. I'm talking to experienced wellness pros. If you don't hear a gasp, you're pricing wrong.
Mm.
Right? If it's not a significant investment, meaning the person that you're working with is going to be as invested as you are in getting to results, right? Then you've set it up. You've actually set both of you up for failure. And so that's healed, integrated orange, where the price needs to be uncomfortable because the result is something that is causing pain to not have. So that means the person already doesn't know how to invest in what they want to experience. So unless you can change that behavior, right? Unless you can change that behavior, they're never going to get to that place that is beyond their current state of pain. So then what are you doing as a wellness pro? What's the point? Like it's all just, we're just like in this blah, blah land. Okay. So now if we don't go, that's just my point of saying, like, if you don't go through fear of protection, you're not going to be priced right, which means you're not going to get good commitment, right? Which means that you're not going to get great results from your Dharma, from the career path you've chosen. Okay, Bill, you.
Well, I think there are some valuable ads there, and I will say that there is somatic intelligence that is worth in developing here to be effective in enrollment or sales conversations. I like to call it enrollment because it feels a little less charged for especially folks who are in the holistic world. But essentially, if we can reframe sales as an enrollment, I think that people generally feel excited when they're enrolling into a school program, right? Because they have an idea of what transformation's on the other end of that. They want to become something. So that's part of it. That just like I think the mistake that a lot of folks make when they're selling something is they're thinking about how much it's going to cost them, but they're not thinking about what they're going to actually get. And if we can, in a sales conversation, be excited about what we can potentially give to somebody by them enrolling it, it can actually feel good. And so, there's obviously a lot that can be happening both in terms of sales and as you're naming here, Kate, pricing. And they're tied together because obviously we're communicating a price when we're doing a sales conversation. And here's where I'll just put a pitch that I think it's really valuable for any practitioner to be doing some kind of deeper work, whether it's trauma healing, whether it's somatic work. Maybe you are a somatic practitioner in some way, but there's some things that need the witnessing of another human being to be healed. And so even if you're a very advanced practitioner, I would recommend, and having trouble with your business or with your finances, I would recommend seeing somebody who you trust to do some of the deeper healing around some of these subjects. And I gotta say, it's helped me tremendously that I happen to be doing somatic experiencing training. And I didn't anticipate how much that would actually be helping me in my business, being able to regulate my nervous system. So when I go into a sales call, I notice that, okay, yeah, even after doing sales calls for 4 years, I still get a little nervous. Even if I know the client, sometimes I do sales calls with clients who've been with me for a while. And I still have to okay, I'm going to step into the sales call. I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. Sometimes I'll even do physical things to regulate my nervous system. One thing is I might these are things that anybody who's done any yoga class probably already does, which is very simple, just feeling into my feet. Okay, I feel my feet touching the ground right now. And I'm noticing my heart's beating faster and I'm starting to sweat a little bit. And I'm about to tell this person about my program. And I'm going to tell this person about my program. I'm also very excited because I see what's possible through both of us creating a win-win situation where both of us get something positive out of working with each other. It's not an extractive relationship, it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And maybe the sales conversation becomes, how can we make this a win-win? Okay, maybe this price sounds really huge to you. How can we create a payment plan so that this becomes workable for you? How do we get creative with the financing so that it becomes easier for you to say yes. And that this takes a little bit more like dynamic thinking. The other thing that I'll mention here is it's important that we feel resourced and in a good place in our own nervous system with where we set our prices.
Mhm.
And if we're not feeling really rooted in that, then we're kind of setting ourselves up to fail. So one of the exercises that I recommend to clients is actually not mine. It's from a business coach named Mark Silver.
Oh yeah,
This,
spent
you know,
time with Mark. Hmm.
so maybe Kate, you even heard of his framework. He uses resonant pricing. And in this framework, he encourages folks to name a price and sit with it and
Hmm.
just notice how your nervous system responds to that
Hmm.
price. What are you feeling? What thoughts are coming up? What images? Do you have discomfort even in your physical body somewhere? Do you feel like a pit in your stomach, like it feels gross? And just noticing these things can be really important data, and then unpacking that. But going through a range of prices can be really powerful. Start at maybe a low price. What's the lowest I could possibly charge? Start there and just notice, like, wow, $20 an hour. Just that ain't gonna work. Or maybe for someone that's like, hey, I was working for $20 an hour. It's not that much different. That feels safe. But just noticing, going through a range, okay, $50 an hour. How does that feel? $100 an hour. How does that feel? And you might notice as you go through a range up to 200, 300, 500, 700, I encourage you to find out maybe there's a pricing ceiling somewhere in there. That's a term that Barry Tussler often uses. And just noticing that pricing ceiling can be really important data. And we can then explore that with a flashlight and see, hey, what's going on? Why does that ceiling really need to be there? Or is it the right ceiling? Maybe so. These explorations are really important because as we go deeper, we may come to find out that a lot of these attitudes and feelings around money may not even be our own. How did our parents relate to money? How did our parents relate to business, or maybe even marketing very specifically? How did my ancestors, if I know anything about my grandparents, how did they relate to money? Did they live through the Great Depression? How did they do? How did they fare? Were they immigrants? Did they have to struggle? What might have been their beliefs and the things that they told your parents about money? And we can begin to inventory some of these things. And as I hear you talking about this too, Patrick, really uh, becoming very conscious and shining the light on some of these parts of ourselves. I think that brings us to a point of making a decision. Hey, do I want to keep this or not? But what's interesting is with somatic work, simply by becoming conscious of it, it begins to lose its grip. And sometimes we can even complete uncompleted cycles in our nervous system that allow us to break out of some of these self-sabotaging patterns. So at any rate, coming back to the pricing exercise, if I may, you may notice a range in there that actually feels reasonable. And maybe on the upper part of that range, it may be like, hey, I think that's in my range right now, but I don't think I can actually say that to my client right now. Maybe that's going to be my price in 6 months or 12 months.
Hmm.
Okay, fine. If that's the case, let's anchor that as your price. Let's say $250 an hour, or let's say, if you're doing packages, which I highly also recommend, okay, selling a package of $7,000 for a 6-month program. That's actually, when you look at what other coaches are charging, there's a lot of coaches out there charging for $1,000 a month for not a lot of work. And there's people who are happily paying that. So if you're doing a lot of work for your practitioners, doing research, if you're taking texts or providing out of consultation support, there's a lot of value that you're delivering through that. So sorry if I'm rambling, but feeling these prices, and if you notice that there is a range and there's a top part of the range, you can anchor that price at whatever it's going to be, and you can spend however long you want or need by saying, hey, I'm going to offer a promotional discount for the next 6 months. And if you're still not ready to set that higher price, you can put that promotional discount for another 3 or 6 months until you're ready. But at least you're anchoring the value of your work to the people who are signing up. And they may also feel like they're getting a great deal.
Yeah.
You're reminding me of this like titration language that gets referred to a lot in nervous system work. And just to respond to one other thing you said, the generational piece, I was thinking that like almost exactly as you were saying it. So it was cool to be in sync with you there. That, yeah, I know this is a big shadow for my mom specifically. And I'm like, okay, I
Mm.
got you. I got you, mom. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I might have an we all have opportunities to heal things that our ancestors didn't, but I was also extending it to like what it will mean for future generations when we can respond to this like, yeah, call to arms to face these shadows. And I loved how you put that too, like awareness is curative. A lot of times just bringing the light of your consciousness to it is enough to ignite the alchemical shifts that are going to start to take place. You still got to do the fucking work. But yeah, like there's a lot that can be said for just bringing a shadow pattern into the light of our awareness.
So I want to add, it's funny when you guys are talking about like fear rejection and being nervous and all that. And I was like, I feel like I'm doing someone a favor. And if I'm gonna like show up on a sales call, like that's my, and I feel like that's what orange looks like healed, where it's like, I already know how to get to where you want to go.
Mm.
I'm volunteering my time to see how serious you are about getting there. So I'm literally doing you a favor by pushing my consciousness into availability right now for you. Because I can just bliss out. I can just be in a like I don't need to have this conversation with you and the problems that you're having and why you can't get there because I already know how to get there. So I just wanted to bring that up because to me that's what orange looks like healed.
Mm.
And it's a very different orientation and it's a completely and very and everything that you guys are all saying about the practices and the somatic experiences, it's like yes, 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 because that's how we get from one side to the other. I want to talk about pricing. So the way that I price is based on return on investment. So it has nothing to do with my personal value, and it doesn't even have that much to do with the person's ability to pay. It has to do with the return on investment the person would get from working with me. And if it's priced on that, then we're both really clear at the outcome, like how that should start, how that ROI should start to unroll as we work together. And to me, that's when we get on, and a lot of people coming in as holistic practitioners or yoga teachers, they don't even know ROI. They don't understand return on investment. They don't know how to look at what they're doing. They don't know how to look at results, what the pain points and results and the journey they can guide and what how to value that journey in terms of dollars. And so they have a hard time then in a sales conversation finding out like what is the value to hitting a certain result or goal or experience. Right. But as that becomes more familiar and like everything, we just get better with practice. So if we're teaching yoga and a student's afraid of handstand and the rest of the class is in handstand, we will build strength slowly. We will weight bear on our arms more. We'll make sure the hands are in alignment. We'll make sure that we know how to integrate the arm bones into the shoulder sockets. Well, there's all of these stages and steps that get us to the point building strength and we'll maybe even turn around to the wall and not kick up against the wall, but we might climb up the wall the other way. And we start to be able to work around and through the issues to be able to see them from all sides. And the fear starts to just dissolve into experience into, oh, I can do this now. Oh, I can do that now. And it's in that familiarity that the shadow gets healed. And then we're able to gift a prospect with our presence because we know how to kick up against the wall. So we can guide them to kick up against the wall or whatever the analogy is. Does that, do you see what I mean? It's like it's a totally different orientation. And it's achievable. And it's so much of that to me is mindset and it's understanding that is also practiced, right? That even that mindset is practiced of like, this person is trying to get to where I already need to go,
Hmm.
where I've already arrived. And if you're an experienced wellness pro, that should be true. We should be in an integrity with our practices and our habits and our lifestyle and our expertise, right? To have that kind of confidence when we show up. So to me, it's a little bit more of like, how do we get grounded in who am I actually showing up as the wellness pro and entertaining a conversation with someone who's interested in change or growth.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first course I did with you. It was called like Lead the Journey. That was, I don't know if you still use Lead the Journey, but it's basically, and that's actually huge because a lot of times we don't necessarily know like what our big inflection points were, where our transitional dilemmas were, and like until that gets mapped out, you should be insecure about selling something to somebody because you don't know what you're selling, you know? So like go like map it out. It's really worthwhile to like write that shit down. And and in doing that, it's I mean, I'm so grateful for it. Like I did make my money back on a lot of the investments that I made, but it's like the other return on investment that you get is these like inner shifts and the new bigger version of who you are that you step into. It's like it's that guided transformation piece that you would bring in. So
Yeah.
yeah, it kind of feels like we circled back a little bit to that like owning your wins, like understanding your own journey so that you
Mhm.
can then yeah, like delineate and describe and make somebody an offer to like help them lead the very journey that you yourself have been on already.
Mhm. And that you've guided other people through, maybe not as organized as you could in the future, right?
Right, and that's where it's all like iterative. So like it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
awesome.
It's huge. We had to make huge changes in Wellness Pro Academy in after 2 years,
Hmm.
of just realizing, and it's just, I just keep looking for like, where are they getting stuck? Right? Where do they stop? Where do they stop? Why do they stop there? How do we take that giant step and make it into 10 baby steps? And that's, to me, that's what we all need to do in leading the journey, is and that's where we can start to price based on results.
I mean, I want to shout you out for this too, because you and I have had conversations, and if I can share, I remember you telling me once, like, I don't have to do this. It was like, I don't necessarily have to do this. So, I mean, maybe even in closing here, I'd just be curious to hear from you, Kate, like what drives you to keep like leading people on this path?
It's so I love how Alex Hormozy, Layla's husband, how he calls it the game. Like I'm definitely, I was raised as an athlete, and my dad was a big, he loved games. He loved sports, competitive nature. So there's definitely the game. And there's also like I said, like the Gen X white female holistic voice is missing from A player conversations in a way that only, I believe only I can bring, not in an egoic way at all, but just because I'm willing to go primal, and I've written a book on primal habits. I've written, you know what I mean? I just have, there's just weird shit that I've done that uniquely positions me to enter that conversation, and not from a place, because I already had an egoic journey with my career, and then I transcended that. And it's so energetically different. But the other thing, Patrick, is like I keep letting it go and it keeps popping back up. Like it
Oh
very
yeah.
much, right? It's like I chop off like one, what is the the goddess in Greek mythology where you cut something off and then it pops back up. That
Oh, yes.
as I let it completely go, and then it reforms exactly as the Hydra. Thank you, Bill. Right? It's like it reforms exactly, and there's a beauty in it not being energetically sourced from my body anymore. So before
Mm.
that push in orange, so part of the shadow when orange is hyper orange, So when we're not hypo in orange, but we're hyper in orange, where it's like, go, get it done, go, love it, the grind, the competition, I want to win, right? Like when that goes hyper, it's being sourced from the body,
Mm.
from the adrenal, the adrenals, it's dopamine, it's cortisol, it's all that, right? And then it's like, I'm just so curious right now. So I rebuilt the team and the tech stack and all that. And it was really, really hard in the last year. A lot of that dissolution, letting go, gaining new skills like crazy, crazy, and becoming AI integrated with people who know how to do the things that I see as, working with these people and creating the best strategy and the affordability that's now in the marketplace due to some shifts in talent in different regions of the world and in AI. So it's just the game, the curiosity, and then what else am I gonna do? Like I have a surf house, a lake house, a ski house. My 17-year-old's amazing and really doesn't want to hang out with me very much. Do you know what I mean? Like my husband has his own amazing company and he has his own amazing things that he's doing and we love being together and we love being apart. And it's just when it all dissolves at the end of the day, like it's the Dharma that just like the Hydra, it just pops back up. And I'm like, yeah, I'm willing to play. And the other thing that I see is that the people who stop, they do uh, cognitively decline. So there's something about we need, like Ayn Rand is saying, like we need to play the game. Like Dan Sullivan says, there is this, your future should be bigger and brighter. And to me,
Mm.
that is my yogic path. Like my yogic path is to become more, you know, and like come what may in the craziness of world politics, global economy, that you know what I mean? Like I'm willing to eat a lot of shit. Like there's like literally that like leadership. Like I'm just
Mm.
and it's always been that too at the core. I had to go through a lot of shadow, but like it's always been that way at the core of like just more interested in the Dharma than in, you know, what everyone else is seeking for pleasure.
Awesome.
You guys, this is fun. I'm sure people are going to want us to do this more. And I just want to put it out there to the audience of like, whatever you guys want from Bill or Patrick, I'm sure they'll be game to jump on again. Really, really fun to hang out with you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much.